Our intention is to create a visual experience. Also look at the creative process behind the novel, and more importantly, we look at a number of artists, local artists who have graced the international stage, and get their perspective as far as what it takes to break that glass ceiling, and what are some of the hindrances, and what are some advantages that our culture and our climate presents for us artists.
Good afternoon, Kervin.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
How are you doing?
Doing great.
Okay. Who is Kervin Desir?
Kervin Desir, wow. Well, first of all, I would like to say I would consider myself a deep sea diver in thought. I like to probe things. I never considered myself a writer. I like to dabble in various genres and various aspects of art.
I noticed you've given your book a very interesting title. It is called Plantation. You want to share with us how you arrived at this title and what inspired the naming of the book?
I wanted to stress on the plantation as a framework for our current society. The hierarchy which currently persists is as a result of a slave plantation. So I wanted to bring that idea across, not actually a plantation where fruits are being planted, but the idea of a plantation and
so
the
it's a metaphor, so to speak.
Metaphor to speak, right.
What is the setting?
Well, if I can just give you a brief synopsis, right? A young man who finishes university and starts to work for this organization, and he happens to be enlightened by a most unlikely source. He meets this guy who sells spice and stuff on the side of the road, a kind of oracle figure. He's very eclectic, right? He's a blues guy. So he kind of makes him aware of the idea that this system persists, right? And he kind of gives him the idea that it can just be more than just a cog in a machine.
I can say you did a pretty good job of expounding that notion or that concept of plantation. You outline various stages of development, various phases of growth and whatnot, and struggles to move from point A to point B.
We in the diaspora, we are from the region, we are confined by the idea of a plantation. We are taught to go to school and go for a job and climb our way up a ladder, right? We were not taught to be entrepreneurs, and we're not taught to follow our creative instincts most of the time. You cannot blame our forefathers for not teaching us these things. They had their own battles to fight. So what I want to do is to bring rise to, hey, this still persists, and we modern now. We have all these advances. We are forward thinkers. We are innovators. So we have to kind of try and break this mold. What do you think that the Sinusha culture has that's so unique about us that we want to share with the world?
Everything that I could think about and also is connected.
And it doesn't inspire you to want to do
Not at all. I don't. If I went somewhere in the next 20 years, I would not say I'm Sinusha.
We have a self contempt that we need to get over, and we have a thing about external validation that we must get over, you know, and we must start to believe in self, believe in country, believe in our people. When I went to the Bahamas to perform and walk into immigration, I see all the entire walkway towards immigration, all the corridor, the whole wall, Bahamian artists and Bahamian athletes. I go to Trinidad, I see the same thing. I just came from Jamaica the day before yesterday, and I saw Chris Gayle, Bob Marley, Molinotti, everything Jamaican. You know? So once you land there, man, you just know you're in Jamaica.
Right.
So I land here, I see Colombian Emerald and Lime and Digicel.
Oh, we like that picture.
And then we name a street after Darren Sammy, we name it in the back of Bosage somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
And that's nonsense. That is just the thought is great,
So we need
but how we go about it is nonsense. We have to learn to love what is ours, love our people.
Encouraging in people a knowledge of self, and that is where the history, geography, literature, and language are important, because these are the tools by which you learn who you are and what you have come from, and hopefully where you are going to based on the trajectory established 3, 4, 5, 6 generations before. But if you're not doing that, then yes, all you will get is consumers. And this is something which pains me both as an artist and an economist, that we really are just being designed by our education. We are being designed to be consumers. And then you have to ask yourself, well, whose design is this? Because if you're not being designed to consume your own stuff, then you're being designed to consume somebody else's stuff.
Your book, you think it's coming at a time when the audience out there can make use of it?
It's very, very important.
In terms of its relevance,
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
as of
yes,
now.
yes, yes. The story is a story that's being told here almost on a daily basis. Every young person wants to aspire to be something greater. All of us have that yearning. However, it's not a start-finish road. There are detours, there are all kinds of circumstances that might come about that might make you question, hey, is it this what I really want? So it's really a story, a coming-of-age story, and it shows that, hey, in our society, especially the things we are influenced by as young people, as poor Caribbean people, as people being disenfranchised, these people being disadvantaged, people that have been on the fringes for hundreds of years. We want to make something of ourselves, and in wanting to make something of ourselves, there are always these negative influences. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to traverse? So really, it's just, hey, look at this story and tell me if you cannot relate. So it's more relatable more than anything.
Tell me a little about Nicky Blues.
Oh boy, well, Nicky Blues, I had a lot of fun writing Nicky Blues. Nicky Blues was a character that was born out of my imagination. They are characters that add life to the town. You know, they add that special something. They are oracles in a sense. They have a lot of deep-seated knowledge. They have a lot of depth. They have a way of bringing out that depth. And also they usually do the most medial jobs. Usually hang around town. They're usually alcoholics, right? So I wanted to bring that out to show that there's color in the town. It's not about hustling, but in the midst of all that hustling, you can find humor, you can find color, and you can find some introspection.
I want to stick on Nicky Blues because there is a lot that he brings out. He is a misfit in society,
Right.
but yet I find he provides the book, or if you want the story, with lots of philosophical, as you said, depth and philosophy, deep stuff. He provides a lot of philosophical reflection, philosophical food for thought, and I think that shows something about certain characters we have, even if in our own society now, in capital city Castries, we have lots of guys who are by the wayside, but guys who have had another life, and who still have lessons to teach.
I used to be very impressed with a guy called Apply. This guy used to walk up the road. He used to drink, and he'd walk up the road past my home with his guitar playing, and I'd listen to the rhythms he'd play, And he was a much older guy than me, And I just saw a great musician. I didn't see a guy who was walking up the road under the influence. I just wanted to be like Apply, play guitar well.
We see these guys shunned by our society because they don't fit into the mold. They roam the streets. Sometimes they don't have shoes, or sometimes they clothes, or they have a stench, right? Sometimes they because of a series of unfortunate events, they happen to find themselves roaming the streets. We don't pay attention to them for some reason, because our societies, everybody's on this race. Everybody's looking for who can help them, and nobody sees them as somebody that can help them. So when I created the story, I did that intentionally, for he being a university man, be the most unlikely catalyst for his kind of enlightenment. So that's what it is. It just shows that you can be enlightened by the most unlikely places.
Throughout the book, we see reference being made to seniors in society and structures and bureaucracies and so on. what messages do you have to people on top, people who run the show, so to speak, people who, the power brokers?
Power brokers.
What do you have to say to them in relation to youth seeking to find themselves, structures that are necessary to help young people to become, within the turmoil of, the society that we have now?
As a young man being an artist, it's very hard to survive in this society we're in. We have our social structures have not placed anything for artists to say that artists can get not only funding, but the relevant skills to develop their various art forms and to develop the way they express themselves. I feel our society has failed us in that regard. I also feel that we are not being inclusive in the conversation. Our social constructs, our political environment and everything, they do not involve us in the conversation. They talk down to us, if I may say so.
I do not see any evidence that we are striving to be more enlightened or more literate or more academically accomplished. You would know probably better than me that 50% of your students are failing English and just under 52% or thereabouts are failing math. 50% of your student population at age, 15, 11 plus,
right.
Yes, age 14, 15, is failing the two basic building blocks of their future development, then you cannot tell me that this society is aiming to be more advanced. And this is why Walcott himself says that the Caribbean really does not deserve the artist it somehow manages to generate. Because we don't do very much to nurture them, but still we have these amazing talents manifesting throughout the Caribbean, but we don't do very much to deserve them.
As a young man, right, in the education system, you find that the system currently harnesses your abilities or it diminishes it. What do you think?
It actually diminishes it, because then what it does is that it places a border over you.
I don't even think we have begun to scratch the surface of that transformative capacity of art, as you put it. There are little initiatives that have happened in different spaces. I used to work with CXC, for example. In CXC, there are what is called a new generation subject, CAPE subjects. Mm-hmm. So now you can do theatre and performing arts as a CAPE subject. And the focus of that subject is not just on academics, theatre and performing arts as an academic subject, but it is as a career opportunity, as opening the doors to a series of opportunities in the creative and performing arts.
Okay, but so you see today there's no viability for artists to sustain.
No, I'm saying that what is not sufficient, whatever there is insufficient. Right. There are a lot of things that are beginning to happen. As I mentioned earlier, the filmmakers workshops that the CBU has run, that trains people in distinct elements of the industry, like from the actual making of the films to the editing, the post-production, the writing of the script writing. All of these are specific skills that need to be cultivated and put in place, because you don't just emerge with a blockbuster film. There's a lot of talent and specialization that goes into that production. So we need to cater for the full range of specialization. It's not just the writer, it's the producer, it's the script maker, it's the costume maker, it's the lighting expert, designer, it's the editing, the post-production. So all of these elements need to be put in place.
Can I take you down another slightly different tangent? Well, along the same but slightly different. Could one say that the CDF is too centralized, that it is too caste-centric, and that perhaps to deal with some of what you were saying, to dialogue more with other people with potential, that the CDF needs to be out there scouting the underground where things are burgeoning, and they need a push, they need some fertilizing, rather than CDF being there and you find CDF, that CDF should go out there and find.
To be honest with you, I believe I could be wrong, but the incubation places for artists, are the countrysides, the area where you get the serene, where you get that solitude, where you get that time to reflect, and where you get that time to think. And if you look at historically, most of our talent has come from the south and the coastal areas, right? So I think there's really something to that. Library, Belleville, all of these Chouzelle, and I mean, you know. And these places have a rich culture. Even the architecture is still strong today. These places are sort of nostalgic in nature, and they bring you to that. They kind of encourage that soul searching thing which writers and artists kind of yearn for.
I heard two guys from down the coast, I think it's down the west coast, maybe Ansery or Canaries, rapping in Creole in a dub rhythm. So this is rap from North America, it's Creole from St. Lucia, and it's dub from Jamaica. And that sort of adaptability, I think, is what we have a legitimate claim to here in St. Lucia, because we are at the crossroads of these centuries.
But my thing is, have we managed to commercialize it and put it there for public consumption?
Well, whether or not we manage to commercialize it is not necessarily the yardstick that I would use. The question is, have we managed to recognize it? Have we managed to say to ourselves, hey, this is a potential new art form, this is something that we do really well, this is something that we might encourage, this is an example of the hybrid artist that is possible coming out of the St. Lucian landscape. Let's examine it, let's study it, let's see if somehow there is something to it. Instead, what we treat it as is just some sort of aberration, some unusual phenomena that comes. We book them for a show, then we forget about them. We don't build on it.
You don't think quality has something to do with it? The quality of our product at the end of the day?
Of course it does, but how do you get quality? You don't get quality spontaneously.
Right.
Nowhere. You
Incrementally.
get a wonderful, intuitive, beautiful, spontaneous thing that if you then want to take to another level, you work with, you produce it, you market it, you dress it up, you dress it down, you record it, you film it. But you, in that process, you also validate and say, hey, this is something worth looking into.
Right.
It may or may not be the next hottest hit, but that does not prevent it from being an authentic cultural expression. And what we're not doing here, I find, is encouraging the exploration of all of these forms and acknowledging them and say, look, there are two guys down the coast who are doing this amazing rap thing. Let's see where that comes from. Let's find out what has driven it. Is there more of that there? Right. Can it turn into something? But even in its natural form, let us understand it at least.
The governments of not just the OECS but the Caribbean have identified cultural industries as an area of niche opportunity on the global stage for the Caribbean. And there are a number of initiatives. There are agencies like Caribbean Export. The OECS has the competitive business unit that is doing a great deal of work trying to help nurture and create the basis for cultural industry. Right. So for example, the CBU, which is based in Dominica, has run workshops for songwriters. They've done workshops for filmmakers. They've taken young filmmakers from the OECS to Martinique to interface with their counterparts. They've helped people produce CDs and to market them. So there are efforts being made, but as I said earlier, I don't think these efforts are sufficient. There's much more we need to do. Derek Walcott speaks about the kingdom of art, right? And in Derek Walcott's work, the idea of a civilized society is a society in which the artist is not beggared to make a living, right? He compares it to the Renaissance Italy, the time of Michelangelo and all the great Renaissance artists. In those times in Italy, the artist it was a privilege for people of wealth to sponsor an artist. Exactly. Right? To have the artist engaged by them to create the Medici family and so on, all the wealthy bankers and so on. They actually engaged artists, they sponsored artists, so you could make a living from art, and it was a decent living. Right. So there's an architecture that we need to put around an economic infrastructure and an architecture of taste that needs to be built around our art.
our society and look at our culture and look at how our the structures that persist in our society, how they embrace our culture and how they don't allow it to evolve, and how they just show the same flower festival, the same Creole Day without integrating with the new. Do you think it's a recipe for disaster, or do you think they're doing the right thing by preserving the indigenous culture?
They should preserve it, right?
They should preserve it,
But in a way, preserve it and make it popular among the youth.
yeah.
Because right now, the whole world has changed. The world is now a global village. We can just flick the channel and we see what people in Tokyo are doing, and we're like, yeah, that's cool, let's do this. We want to skateboard, yeah?
Right.
We want to do graffiti, we want to grow long beards, we want to do what kids in Iraq are doing, because you know it's right around the corner. But at the same time, it's important to preserve it, but then integrate it, evolve. If you do not evolve, you die. Well, we in the Caribbean, right? And we're strategically placed between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. And I've been in other countries where every day is just gloomy and it's dark. And one thing about artists, they love to paint in natural light. If you look at most great artists, they probably have a skylight in their studio. A lot of French artists used to actually travel to the Caribbean, you know, way back when we had French colonies here. They used to travel and paint in those areas where the light was natural and the light was there throughout the year, instead of going back to Europe where it's dark and gloomy and the industrial age had caused so much fog in the air that you really couldn't see, or there was no beauty. We have the natural beauty, we have beautiful people, we have beautiful scenery, we have the beaches, we have all these things. We should be the greatest artists out there, because people leave their homes and come here on vacation just to experience those things. So we should be painting what we see and what's around us and export that.
We bury ourselves with so much problems and wanting stuff that we cannot see the natural beauty of the island.
Exactly.
People always complain, they blind us, they blind. No, the only thing that's blocking you is yourself.
There's nothing wrong with St. Lucia.
There's nothing
everything
wrong.
wrong with everything else.
You
Everybody
just
wants to
have
make
open
money.
your eyes and see the beauty around you, that's all.
St. Lucian writers are very grounded in the landscape all around them. Perhaps it's the stark beauty of this place, the natural drama of its hills and valleys and skylines and weather patterns. It's just an amazing place geographically to be in. You cannot walk this landscape and not be stunned. You know what I'm saying? Part of the reason has to be that Derek Walker before us celebrated it so profoundly. He made it all right, you might say. He made it very all right to be in love with this landscape. And I'm not saying that he was the cause of it, but you certainly see that being reflected in a lot of the language of poets.
Art emerges from a cultural milieu. And if you are true to the expression of your spirit in that milieu, then your art becomes timeless and placeless, right? Yeah. But if you try to create art that has no roots, you will never make it.
Okay.
Because it is not grounded in any existential reality.
Well, Kervin, I think we've pretty much we pretty much had quite a bite in terms of what your book is about. At this point, I'm wondering whether you would want to share by reading a small excerpt from your book for our audience.
Excellent.
Any passage of your choice?
Passage of my choice. Yes. Can I just read the opening interlude?
Whichever, if you're in love with it, you can read it.
So in love with it is just the first thing that came. I had to give in to the faint trumpet sound that the wind carried, listening now intently, barely hearing the staccato rhythm as it all came to me like a flashing revelation. But it all makes sense. Yes, it does. Intently I roared, enjoying the weight of the truth expelled. But does it all make sense? But is it not all a casual dance each must play, from the tiniest fabric against the wind's will to the gravitation of like mind, refining each other for oratory or germination of a sprout? Such is real, as nature can be simply expressed and yet still be infinitely complex. For the forces that work beneath the surface planted pleasant thoughts that broke through the soils of disillusionment, blocking my path to the sun. Oh well, is it true that the color blue stains the brain long after the vision fades? So is it true that a faint trumpet, struggling frequencies occupied by so much noise, could ring a bell? Anytime I revisit her memory, I'll be temporarily confined by its depths. She, like most others who seem to wander through my life, had an acute sense of tolerance for my random sparks of genius, attributed to my enigmatic antics, and the frantic tales attributed to my curiosity and exploration into love's realm.
Well, just a few days ago, I was reading just, random stuff, and I came across a quote by one Larry L. King, I think an American. He says, and I think that advice can be very relevant to the question you asked. His advice to budding writers especially is read, write. When you're not reading or you're not writing, rewrite. Read, write.
Right.
When you're not reading
Right.
or you're not writing, rewrite.
Right.
So the lesson in that is a manuscript that eventually becomes a book. The person who buys your book or who you gift the book may never have an inkling what it took to get that manuscript in becoming
Right.
to transform into a book. The labors of love and the hours of the sleepless nights and the rewriting and the crossing and doing over.
Right.
The point is, young writers seem to believe that every one of them comes out with a masterpiece. You don't know that you have a masterpiece. Somebody out there will tell you you have a masterpiece.
Right.
You must make it an export product, and be
Right.
sure that it's an
You
export
must
product.
polish it.
And you can't make a decision by yourself. You alone can't decide whether,
Right.
okay, I'm ready for export and nobody else agrees with you, So you have to make sure that what you're doing is of an international standard, and be sure that other people have agreed with that. You can't believe by yourself that this is great.
Right.
And the machinery that drives the industry decide that's not good.
Take poetry, for example.
Right.
A lot of people think that writing poetry is just a matter of putting down some ideas, some sentences, and be sure that the last word in each sentence rhymes with the preceding one. That's a very simplistic notion. Right? If you want to be a good artist, whether a poet, a writer, a singer, whatever, you need to spend time perfecting your art. And to perfect your art, you need to read the works of the masters in the field before, and not just read it, but study the technique, understand the technique. In art, form is as important as function, right? You need to understand how the words come together, the mechanics of the use of language, right? And the subtleties in the use of language for you to have the impact. Because art is really recreating, either visually or in people's minds, a different world that you want them to see and appreciate.
Practice every day, and don't give up, and stay focused, be disciplined. And also, don't get caught up in the drugs thing. Just keep in mind that your competition is the world. You're competing in the entire world. Do not get yourself tied up into the mindset that you want to be the best in St. Lucia or you want to be as good as the guy in Trinidad. That does not work. Just do your music and focus on competing in the world. The opportunities now are better for the artists now than they were for me when I was growing up. So it's a question of them being persistent and preparing themselves for the world. I want to appeal to St. Lucians to be more supportive of the artists and by extension of their own people generally, because that is sadly lacking in St. Lucia. Because everybody else from outside that's coming to our country is supporting each other, And if we don't start to support each other, one morning we'll wake up and discover we own nothing in the country because we didn't get together.
I think defiance should be an important element of the human spirit. And I'm talking defiance not in an anarchistic way to say defy things for the sake of defying things. I think defiance is important to the spirit because at all times we must have the right and the capacity to say no or to shout down the things that degrade us, dehumanize us, that dehumanizes other people, the conditions that keep people down or keep them suppressed and oppressed.
Well, I think you have quite an interesting publication. I am wishing you all the very best. I hope you have a very successful launch. I'm looking forward to it. And may I wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
And keep on writing.
Thank you, sir.
I'm looking forward to your next.
This process has truly whet my appetite to exploration and exploring our island, our landscapes, our flora, our fauna, what makes us unique, our artist perspective. This sent me on a quest. I was reintroduced to St. Lucia in ways I never knew, through the eyes of various artists, through the eyes of majestic sceneries, and I now have a more deep, profound respect for what makes us unique. But I'm truly grateful for the experience, and it has taught us a lot. It has taught us that you can have a vision and make it tangible with just communicating and selling your idea. The book really shaped me, the book and my son, to look at life very differently and to take things more seriously and to go after your dreams. Because I was like everybody else who thought that having a 8 to 4:30 and being confined by a desk is what equates success. But I realized success is not really what you do, but how fulfilled your life is. Are you harnessing your creative juices? Are you really going out there and expressing yourself? Are you taking chances? Are you taking risks? Are you breaking ground? Are you developing your relationships? So now I have a new perspective on success, and being an artist, it has gotten me braver in my attempt to make it. But anything from now on that I create will be under the Desire umbrella, and I hope that you could appreciate what I bring to you, because I take my time and I will deliver the best possible product forward to speak volumes about where I come from, my country, our diaspora, and what we can do and what we're looking forward to in the future. So with that, I tell you guys to go brave, go out there and just create and imagine the possibilities.